So, how much proof do you really need to create a historical figure? To say someone actually existed. An eyewitness account, maybe? A biography? Well, what if I told you that for over 70 years, a Roman emperor was debated, studied, and written into the history books, all based on just a handful of coins that, well, might not say what we thought they said? Let's dive into this incredible story of how history gets made and sometimes completely unmade.
Okay, take a look at this. It's an ancient Roman coin. We find these things, we clean them off, and we think, aha, that's Emperor so-and-so. But what if it's not that simple? This little piece of metal is right at the center of a huge puzzle that historians and coin experts, numismatists if you want to get fancy, have been trying to solve for literally centuries.
And here's where the real problem starts. Early Roman rulers, well, they had this habit of recycling names. Take the name Caesar, for example. That wasn't just one guy. It was a name, it was a title, it was a whole legacy. The same thing happens with names like Claudius or titles like Augustus. And that creates a massive puzzle. When a coin just says Caesar on it, who in the world are we actually talking about?
And this really breaks it down, doesn't it? A coin with the name Caesar could be the famous dictator himself, Julius Caesar. Or it could be his adopted son Octavian, who also used the name Gaius Julius Caesar. Or, hey, it could even be the Emperor Caligula, whose birth name was, you guessed it, also Gaius Julius Caesar. 3 huge figures, one name on a coin. You can see how easy it is for things to get confusing.
Which brings us to our main event today, the strange 70-year saga of a supposed usurper named Carausius II. His entire existence, his whole story, was basically conjured out of thin air from just a few small, worn-down pieces of metal. Let's set the scene. The year is 1887. A brilliant numismatist named Arthur Evans is looking at a coin that was found at a Roman fort in Britain. He sees a name he recognizes, Carausius, but the style, the inscription, it all seems wrong for the known emperor of that name. He starts to think he's found someone totally new.
And this right here was the key. On the coin, he makes out the letters Domino Caravasio CS. Evans zeroes in on those last 3 letters, C-E-S. To him, that could only be an abbreviation for Caesar, the title for a junior emperor. And boom, just like that, a brand new historical figure, Carausius II, was born. So Evans starts piecing this all together. He argues that, based on the style of the letters and some abbreviations, the coin had to be from the early 5th century, around 407 AD. He even came up with a theory that this new Caesar was ruling in Britain while the main emperor, Constantine III, was off fighting in Spain. It was a really neat, compelling story. But you know how these things go. Almost as soon as the story was written, it started to come apart at the seams. The mystery was really only just getting started.
And here was the first giant red flag. The early 5th century in Roman Britain was, sure, it was chaotic, but it was also pretty well documented by historians of the time. They wrote about all sorts of short-lived emperors and usurpers. And yet, there was total, complete silence about a Carausius Caesar. I mean, for a guy with a title that important, that is just incredibly unlikely. Now, you'd think more evidence would help, right? Well, not exactly. By 1927, 2 more of these strange coins had been found. But instead of confirming Evans's theory, they just ended up muddying the waters and opening the door for totally new interpretations.
And this is where it gets really fun. Another scholar, Alfred Anscombe, takes a look at the same coins and sees something completely different. He argues that Evans just plain misread the worn-out letters. It wasn't Carausius, he claimed, it was Censarios. So all of a sudden, our new emperor wasn't Carausius II, but maybe a guy named Censorius? Just a year later, the plot thickens again. A third, much clearer coin pops up, and its inscription seems to say Censaris. So now we've got 3 potential names, Carausius, Censorius, and Censaris, all from just a few similar-looking coins. The ground under this theory was getting shakier by the minute. For decades, this whole debate raged on. But then, a combination of better science and one absolutely shocking discovery would change everything. It was about to bring the whole house of cards crashing down.
So scholars like C.H.V. Sutherland went back to basics. They started pointing out that Evans's whole 5th century date just didn't fit the actual physical evidence.
The size of the coins, the artistic style, even the very idea of a usurper using the title Caesar. It all pointed not to the 400s, but squarely to the mid-300s.
By the 1950s, a new consensus had formed, and it was backed up by hard analysis of coin hoards. These mystery coins were not from the 5th century at all. They could be definitively dated to a very specific 4-year window between 354 and 358 AD, and that changes everything.
But the idea of Carausius II was a stubborn one. In 1956, a historian named C.E. Stevens made one last really clever attempt to prove he was real. He accepted the new date, but he argued that Carausius was a sort of lesser usurper who called himself Caesar to show he was still loyal to the main emperor. And to prove this wasn't just some crazy idea, he pointed to another usurper, a guy named Vetranio, who had apparently done the exact same thing on one single unique coin.
So it all came down to this. Stevens' entire elaborate theory, really the last credible defense of Carausius II as a historical figure, was now balanced precariously on this single piece of evidence: the existence of one unique coin in a museum that seemed to say, Vetranio, most noble Caesar.
And here it is, the knockout punch. That Vetranio coin, it was a fake. Experts re-examined it and discovered it was actually a genuine ancient coin of a totally different ruler that someone in modern times had skillfully altered to add the word Caesar. It wasn't an ancient artifact, it was a clever fraud.
Once that Vetranio coin was exposed as a forgery, the whole parallel case just vanished into thin air. The entire argument for a Caesar named Carausius II, which serious scholars had debated for 70 years, well, it just evaporated. There was absolutely nothing left to support it. So, what does this whole incredible detective story tell us? It really forces us to ask a much bigger, much more fundamental question about what history actually is. This quote just absolutely nails it. I mean, think about it. There are thousands of scholarly articles, books, dissertations, and debates about the history and languages of Tolkien's Middle-earth. It's a massive academic field. But we all know Middle-earth isn't real. The case of Carausius II shows that a huge body of sincere, rigorous academic work can be built around a historical fact that might not be real at all. So why did this idea hang on for so long? Well, a big part of the answer is something called confirmation bias. Once Arthur Evans put the idea of Carausius II out there, scholars started looking for evidence that would confirm it. They'd sometimes overlook or try to explain away any evidence that contradicted it. Basically, they saw what they expected to see. So what's the big takeaway from this amazing story? Well, it shows us that history isn't just a list of facts. It's an ongoing conversation, a process of interpretation that's always changing. It proves that a single object, like a coin, can be read in a dozen different ways. And maybe most shockingly, it shows that entire historical figures can be built up, debated, and then ultimately thrown out, all based on the absolute faintest of clues. And that leaves us with this one last lingering question. When we look back at the past, especially the really distant past, how much of what we know is solid, confirmed fact, and how much of it is just the best, most logical, and most well-researched story that we've been able to piece together from the clues left behind? Something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.